Hey guys, it's Christian. For this video, I'm going to do a breakdown of all the Disney Star Wars movies and TV shows and kind of give you my critique on each of them, as well as kind of what I would do to kind of change them up and kind of make them more a little consistent. Just because, some of them are a little bit hit or miss. Some of them are great, but then some of them are just kind of Without further ado, let's get started. So first up, we have Star Wars Rebels, and this show was one of my favorite shows when it first premiered. It was a little bit kind of kid friendly in the beginning, but as the show went on, it kind of found its voice and became more mature. Obviously by season 4, there's a lot of death and sacrifice, and especially with the characters of Kanan and Ezra, which was super crazy. But yeah, I definitely really enjoyed it. Overall, I thought this was a great series. Didn't really have too many problems with it. First season, like I said before, is kind of where they were trying to find their footing and everything. Kind of establish the characters, establish who they are in the universe. Since this was an animated show, they kind of had to have that kind of younger audience in mind and everything. So yeah, I completely understand the tone that they wanted to set with that. I guess because with Clone Wars, that was very obviously it was during the middle of the Clone Wars, so obviously that show was very, very more mature in its tone. So when it came to Star Wars Rebels, my expectations were really, really high to kind of see oh shoot, we're gonna see what happens right before A New Hope. We get to see kind of everything post Revenge of the Sith, how the Empire is in power and how this rebellion's kind of slowly but surely starting to kind of bubble up and everything. So I guess my expectations were really, really high, but I know you kind of have to have that relationship with the characters, kind of know who they are. You have to kind of play to your audience and everything, since this is animation, and this is the first thing that Disney Star Wars has kind of done. You kind of want to get that younger audience involved, you kind of get that new next generation involved in Star Wars. So yeah, I completely understand that. But yeah, I'm just glad that Dave Filoni decided to kind of mature the tone as it went along. The character of Ezra Bridger, he starts off as kind of the street rat character, kind of like Aladdin. In Aladdin, he doesn't know anything about the Force. He doesn't know really anything about the fall of the Republic or about the rise of the Empire. He's kind of really much on the fringes of society with Lothal. Yeah, it totally makes sense that he would kind of be this bratty teenager, so to speak, and he gets brought into this group with this small band of rebels, and he kind of matures as the show goes on. So yeah, I really appreciated that. That the show kind of reflected the main character, how he starts off very immature at first, and then he kind of grows into maturity, becomes a Jedi, and then eventually sacrifices himself for the rebellion, sending off, having those giant octopus monsters take over Thrawn's ship and then send them off into hyperspace, which is really cool. And then I'll get to this a little bit later, but I'm glad that they're going to be bringing him back up in the Ahsoka show. And then we can kind of finish off that storyline with him, just because he's a great character, and I'm glad that he had his great run in Rebels, and then he gets to continue on into Ahsoka. So yeah, I'm glad to see that. Yeah, I guess my only criticism was that the animation style was a little bit rough in the beginning. It felt very kind of robotic in a way, kind of like what I was saying before. This is the first Star Wars animated show under Disney's regime. So, it kind of makes sense that they kind of want to stray away from, the Clone Wars animation, where I think they said they were inspired by, I think it was called Thunderbirds or something like that. It was kind of the puppet style animation with the Clone Wars. So that makes sense. And then this one's a little bit more the edges are a little bit more rounded, the animation's a little bit more flowing, not as stiff as Clone Wars at times. But it was a little bit rough in the beginning. But I don't fault Dave Filoni for that. I know not only is he trying to find his footing with the writing and the setting and the characters, but also with this new animation style. So yeah, I totally give him a pass for that. But yeah, that was really my only critique with that. I honestly don't really have too many things I would change about Rebels. I guess my only thing is maybe they would just take a little bit more time to kind of develop the characters earlier on, kind of give them more depth. It can be, family friendly, but not too childish. I appreciate they kind of took the Harry Potter route, where they have the characters and the tone kind of be more family friendly, and then it matures as it goes on. But maybe just have a little bit more of that darkness in season 1, and just have those episodes feel a little bit more, have more stakes in those earlier episodes, to kind of get that kind of hardcore Star Wars audience involved, as well as bring in the next generation of fans. So yeah, that was really my only critique. I don't really do too many things to change it. But yeah, overall, Rebels is a great show. I enjoyed watching it, enjoyed all 4 seasons. Like I said before, the first couple episodes were a little, kid-friendly, a little bit on like the slower side, not as many stakes going on. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed it. And yeah, I think they did a good job. All right, now we move on to Star Wars The Force Awakens. I think overall, out of all like the sequel trilogy, this is probably like the most rewatchable, just in my opinion. I think it did a good job at kind of honoring the original movies. Especially the original trilogy. But I think the only downside is that, maybe it copied a little bit too much of A New Hope. I think it would have been actually really interesting if they actually took George Lucas's original treatments and kind of went with those. So I know there's reports of George Lucas's original ideas for the sequel trilogy, and some of them are actually really, really good. Some of them are kind of like, eh. But I think if they collaborated with, like Michael Arndt and, Lawrence Kasdan and J.J. Abrams, if they all were kind of in the writer's room together, took their time to like develop, what the new trilogy would be. I think just the only downside is that, Disney bought Lucasfilm for like that $4.5 billion or whatever. And, they had to start cranking out new movies really quickly. So, I guess it makes sense that they kind of had to rush episode 7. But I mean, it kind of shows in the end, how like it does seem very rushed, where JJ really wanted to do like something for the fans. Kathleen Kennedy wanted to do something more for the fans and not necessarily, continue on the story that George Lucas set with the original trilogy. And, I think that it was kind of a shame that they didn't do that, just because looking back at George's original treatments, just like, dang, he had some really cool ideas to kind of move the story forward. And I know JJ's whole thing is like, we have to go backwards to go forwards. I don't know. I guess it just kind of comes out as a bit of a detriment to the overall story. They really could have echoed the beats of the original trilogy, but while still moving forward, rather than just having a big carbon copy of A New Hope. But on like a more like positive note, with The Force Awakens, I think they did a really good job at kind of honoring the original trilogy while also, bringing things that are new. I think what was really good is like the whole ending with like the cliffhanger, literally on a cliff with Rey and Luke, and Rey holding up the lightsaber to Luke and then having him join the fight, where yeah, I mean, I'll probably get to this once we get to The Last Jedi, but yeah, for now, it's just like, okay, it was a bit of a retread of A New Hope, but, now we're kind of, setting the stage for something completely new in Star Wars. And, it was like a really cool, experience to have that, where, we have all this expectation, like, what's episode 8 going to be? Yeah, like I said before, I'll get into this with Last Jedi, but I'll kind of hint at it, like, now. But, it would have been great if, JJ and Ryan, and Colin Trevorrow at the time, would have all collaborated on the new trilogy, because the reports are out that, they didn't have a plan for the sequel trilogy, where JJ just kind of wrote The Force Awakens, and then Rian Johnson just had his own ideas for Last Jedi and kind of ran with it. And, now we see the results. And, I'll get this with Rise of Skywalker, but where, you're kind of going this way with Force Awakens, and then you're kind of, going to the left with Last Jedi, and then now JJ's kind of trying to steer the ship with Rise of Skywalker, get it back to his original timeline that he set in Force Awakens. Again, it would have been great if they just had, an overall story, an overall plan for the new trilogy, and, kind of went with that. I guess, they just had to, crank out Force Awakens as quickly as possible. And, it's just like, we got to make good on our $4.5 billion investment, and just get episode 7 out there without having a roadmap for where the story could go, or have some collaboration between the filmmakers. Hey, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. So, but anyway, those are my overall thoughts on Force Awakens. With this video, I didn't really want to do kind of like a breakdown of the movies themselves. I kind of just want to give like a kind of a brief overview of like my thoughts on the movies and the shows and everything, and then kind of just bring up like what I would change. Maybe another video or something, I'll do like a full breakdown of the different movies and TV shows. But I know there's plenty of other YouTube channels and who do that, so I won't do that here. So yeah, those are just my overall thoughts on Force Awakens. Kind of like what I said before, like out of all the sequel trilogy, it's definitely the most, in my opinion, just the most rewatchable, the most, I guess, consistent out of the 3 of them. Even though it has like its problems, and it's very much a retread of A New Hope, I think JJ really did a good job, just setting up what the new trilogy could be, and under the circumstances of Bob Iger not wanting to use George Lucas's treatments and making more something for the fans instead of moving the story forward. It could have been a lot worse if you think about it. So I think yeah, out of all the circumstances that I said before, we kind of got like the best result that we could with Force Awakens, and like I said before, I'll get to Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, but for now, those are my thoughts on Force Awakens. So yeah, we can move on. Right now we get into Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and with this one, I actually really enjoy this one. I think the first half for me is just a little bit clunky. The story's a little bit convoluted in a way, and the characters are just a little bit, some of them aren't really as three-dimensional. They're kind of just there, just to kind of move the plot forward, and, some of them could have been cut out. But I think the second half, once they're all together on Yavin 4, and they're about, making the plan to, get the plans for the Death Star, and, that whole third act with the Battle of Scarif, the Battle in the Sky, the rebel characters kind of infiltrating the base and getting the plans, Jyn and Cassian trying to get the plans and everything, the K2SO, I thought all that was great. It really reminded me of A New Hope and everything. Like, obviously, takes place just before A New Hope, but yeah, it really just kind of gave me those feels of like watching A New Hope. Bringing in some of the characters from A New Hope, whether CGI recreation or just taking archival footage and putting it into the movie itself, was really great. I mean, I'll get to the CGI recreations a little bit later. I thought some of the characters are great. There's a lot of like great humor, a lot of great action, a lot of great drama. Just seeing Cassian Andor kind of his full rebel form. I'll get to Andor in a second later on. Just seeing him take on that leadership and everything. And, seeing Jyn Erso, her whole character arc, there's like, some problems with that. I guess just some of the way that they kind of introduced the characters was just a little jarring at first. Because I know there was like reports of a lot of like tampering with the editing, where like Gareth Edwards had this whole like original cut. And you kind of see this like in the original trailer. There's obviously scenes that weren't in the movie, things that were changed around. And I know that there was like a lot of reshoots. I think it was like, Tony Gilroy, who's directing Andor, kind of like took over the production and kind of steered the ship towards this other way, I think, because originally it was supposed to be kind of like this, down and dirty, heist movie. You can kind of tell from like a lot of those early trailers how the tone was supposed to be. Obviously we didn't really get that. So I guess because, Kathleen just saw the initial cut and, it was very intense, very dark, very dramatic, and I guess she just wanted to make it more, I wouldn't necessarily say like family friendly, but I guess like tone it down a little bit, kind of make it more Star Wars-y and not necessarily like, Saving Private Ryan in space. So I understand that, but yeah, it would have been nice if we kind of got like an alternate cut of Rogue One, kind of like that dark, gritty tone that was kind of established in those first teaser trailers and everything. But yeah, oh well. But yeah, those were like kind of like my overall thoughts for Rogue One. But yeah, as for like my negatives, the CGI recreations of Tarkin and Leia, I think the one that they did for Tarkin was fine. At the time it was, it was very controversial of having, bringing back actors from the dead and having, like a CGI recreation and all that. Apparently they got, permission from the Cushing family to use his likeness in Rogue One, which is understandable. It was still a little off. I think if they just had the actor who was kind of doing the motion, would have been really cool. Maybe put him like in a prosthetic or something. It would have been great. But yeah, having like a full-on CGI recreation was, just a little weird to look at, and it was kind of obvious as like, this is this is definitely a CGI recreation. And I know this is kind of like the heyday of the de-aging CGI or like the aging CGI and everything, and they don't really do that now. I'm thinking about like Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, where instead of like having a CGI recreation of Chadwick Boseman, they just move the story forward and just have him pass away in the movie itself. Now filmmakers are kind of doing that now instead of like recreating actors who passed away in CGI or like archival footage, which we'll get into with Rise of Skywalker, but I'll leave that for later. The CGI on Tarkin was fine. If they kind of reduced his role a little bit, that would have been good. I know what they're doing now with the deep fake technology, like with Luke Skywalker in Mandalorian season 2, which we'll get to later, is probably the best way to go. And then kind of using it sparingly, kind of like what they did in Mandalorian season 2 and with the Book of Boba Fett episode with Luke Skywalker in it, instead of just having a full-on CGI recreation, just because it has kind of like that uncanny valley feel to it. I guess it was what it was, and I think they did the best they could. And then I think if they were to do it now, they probably wouldn't recreate Tarkin CGI. They'd probably just have an actor in prosthetic makeup and then just play the role that way. And then also with Leia, that was like the weirdest one. I think they really could have just had the actress, just turn, because literally they just had the Princess Leia turning around and saying hope, And then they could have just had an actress, who looked like a young Carrie Fisher and just had her say the line. We would have understood that was Leia. We didn't really have to have like a whole CGI recreation. And, out of the two of them, that was definitely the most jarring one more than the Tarkin one. The Tarkin one was, still a little off-putting, but the one with Leia, that one was just really bizarre and just didn't really look right. We're audience members. We're not stupid. We know who the characters are. Just have them made up as the past actors or the past characters, and then we'll figure it out. You don't have to have a whole CGI recreation of a character for us to understand who that person is. Anyway, I'm kind of going on a tangent, so yeah, let me get back. But yeah, those are kind of like my overall thoughts of Rogue One. I think if I were to change anything, I would kind of just make the characters just a little bit more three-dimensional. Maybe take some of the characters out. Maybe have some of the characters that aren't really necessary to the plot just kind of taken out, or just maybe combine characters, or just kind of give more background to the characters in general. I know it's supposed to be a war movie, and with war movies, you don't really know too much about the backstories of the soldiers or the characters who are in the movies themselves. But I mean, you can still make them compelling in a way. I'm thinking about like Saving Private Ryan. With all those characters and all those guys kind of going on their journeys. Even though you don't know too much about them, they all have kind of distinct personalities. They all kind of have moments of quietness where they're kind of explaining like who they are and who their backgrounds are. And, they're able to kind of move the story forward with that. Made the story just a little more compelling, maybe show a little more consequences, maybe not have like the first half kind of jump from planet to planet to planet to planet, but really just kind of have it be just about, Jyn Erso, maybe just have it her perspective for most part. And you can kind of cut away to the Empire here and there, but just have it really be her story, kind of give her, the most background, don't just time jump from, when she's a little girl to suddenly in prison and kind of being broken out and kind of put it into the story and everything. Overall, I think this was like a really good movie. I'm glad it's kind of like just a one and done. It was good way to kind of set up, how the rebels got the plans to the Death Star. Yeah, I thought it did a really good job with that. So yeah, it was good. All right, now we move on to Star Wars Resistance. I don't really have too much to say about this show. To be honest, I haven't watched the entire series. I've just kind of watched a couple episodes here and there. So I guess my opinion isn't super valid. So I guess I would just kind of base it on, the episodes I have seen. But yeah, I think what I like about the show the most is kind of like the different animation style that it has. It feels kind of more like a 2D, 3D kind of hybrid show, which I think is like really cool. Kind of distinguishes itself from Rebels and from Clone Wars. I think what it really does well, just from the episodes I've seen, it kind of gives more background to like what was going on in the Resistance during the sequel trilogy, just because, episode 7 and 8 kind of take place like a day or two away from each other. You don't really get to see what happens then, and then, there's a time jump in between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, so it's kind of cool to see, what was going on in the background during those events. But I think like my only downside is that like this one, kind of like with Rebels season 1, where this is kind of like a little bit more kid-friendly, a little bit more goofy, kind of more focused on like gags and stuff like that, which is fine just because, I know that this is like geared towards like a younger audience where, Rebels is more towards like a middle grade audience. This is definitely more for like, maybe like elementary audience. I mean, obviously all of Star Wars shows are meant for everyone, but like this is kind of geared towards, the younger viewers. I guess that was like kind of the reason why, I didn't get into the show as much, and I didn't really, follow it along as much, just because it wasn't really, towards my demographic. But I mean, it's no fault of the show. That's just, who the audience is. So yeah, as long as it's good for them, then, that's all that really matters. So yeah, I guess that kind of be my only like negative about it, but not really a negative. Kind of like I said before, like I don't have too many opinions about Resistance just because I haven't seen all of it. I think if there's like one thing that they could change is that if they could have kind of adopted more of the style from Rebels and kind of had a slightly more mature tone, just because, it takes place with like the Resistance, just so much like untold story that we didn't really get from the sequel trilogy. I know there's like books and comics and video games that kind of center around the Resistance. This could have been a really good way to kind of show like, hey, how did the Resistance get formed? How is it different from the New Republic? Maybe give more background to like how the First Order rose. Kind of going back to like my problem with Force Awakens is that there's like a 30-year gap. It's like what happened after, the rebellion took down the Empire, and now suddenly the First Order is in power. The New Republic, I guess, is still in power, but they're kind of like at a stalemate, I guess, and then the Resistance is like a completely different faction from the New Republic. It would have been interesting if Resistance kind of just delved more deeply into that background, and because not everybody reads the books or the comic books or plays all the video games, so having like TV show that kind of explains all that backstory of like what happened during that 30 years instead of kind of having a family-friendly show. Anyway, maybe if I watch a show, there could be more like Easter eggs, more explanation and stuff like that. Again, I haven't watched the entire show, so I can't really have like a valid opinion on this one. Just from like my perspective of being like a Star Wars fan and wanting to know more about the Resistance, it would have been cool if like that was the tone of the show, that was the setting of the show, that was the premise of it, is that kind of gives more explanation of kind of like that gap that I was talking about before, like what happened in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, just as far as politics and the government. But yeah, I know that would be like super hard to do, have a show be all about politics and everything. So yeah, those are kind of like overall my thoughts of Resistance. Like it's a fun show, for its audience, I'm sure. And I just kind of wish that they kind of gave more background to kind of like that 30-year gap in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. All right, and now we move on to The Last Jedi. And yeah, this is definitely probably the most controversial of all the Star Wars movies, in my opinion. I remember seeing it in theaters and at the very end being kind of like, huh? When it came to like, Broom Boy lifting up his broom as a lightsaber. And I was just like, okay, because I guess like, yeah, my overall criticism of the movie is that it kind of resolves everything, so to speak, in this movie. Like, who raised parents, at least, again, we'll get to Rise of Skywalker, but like, who raised parents, at least in this one, it's just like, they're nobodies. Like, who is Snoke? Who cares? Let's just kill them off. And then it's just like, well, who's the main bad guy now? I mean, I guess, Kylo Ren is the, supreme leader now. And, what's he really going to do? The rebellion's kind of left limping, but, Leia says, like, we have everything we need. And it's just like, wait, where's the story going? I wish there was more consistency between Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker. Kind of like I said before, like I just wish there was, a through line. I wish there was a plan. I wish, there was more collaboration between J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson. And then, at the time, it was going to be Con Trevorrow, but then it was replaced by J.J. Abrams, and yeah, I'll get to that later. I think if they were to kind of just stick with the decisions that Rian Johnson made in Last Jedi for Rise of Skywalker, I think I would have been okay with that, but the fact that, J.J. Abrams is kind of like trying to reverse engineer everything that happened in Last Jedi and, kind of make it more towards his theories that he had in Force Awakens, it's just obvious and, just doesn't really work. I guess what I appreciate is that, the fact that Rian Johnson was, bold enough to kind of slash down our fan theories of like Snoke is going to be kind of like this the Emperor type villain. He's going to be like kind of this overall mastermind, trying to take over the universe, and maybe he's going to be the villain that Rey and Luke take on at the end of Episode 9 when we didn't know that it was going to be called Rise of Skywalker. And then with Rey's parents, like maybe she's Luke's daughter, maybe she's Palpatine's daughter, maybe she's a Kenobi or something. All these theories that we had. They're just like, nope, she's a nobody. She, her parents were drunkards and died in a pauper's grave or something like that, who sold her off for drinking money. It's like, oh, okay. I guess as time went on, people were kind of processing Last Jedi and, okay, maybe she's a nobody, but, now she can be whoever she wants to be. Maybe that's exciting. The fact that Kylo killed Snoke and the fact that, now he's the supreme ruler, what's that going to mean for the universe and the galaxy? So I guess people were kind of having their 5 stages of grief or something, where there was like denial, and then, it's like bargaining. It's like, oh, maybe there can be something salvaged out of all this. So I guess that's kind of what I appreciate about Last Jedi, is that, even though, Ryan, struck down our fan theories, at least, he kept us talking in a way. We're like, okay, now we're not following the conventional Star Wars trilogy. We have something completely new. And, he kind of opens the door at the time for Con Trevorrow to do Episode 9 and not, I guess, be shackled by, these fan expectations that JJ left us in Force Awakens. So kind of opened the door for that, but, didn't quite happen. As I keep saying, I'll get to that in Rise of Skywalker. But yeah, I guess those are just kind of like my overall thoughts on Last Jedi. If I were to change something, kind of like I was saying before, just more consistency with the story and the characters and with the filmmakers, and just having a plan in general. Kind of like what I was saying with Force Awakens, and probably what I will say about Rise of Skywalker. It's like poetry. It rhymes. Every stanza rhymes with the last one. But anyway, yeah, let's move on. one. All right, now we move on to Solo, a Star Wars story. This one was fine. I guess I'll say some positive stuff first. One of the biggest things I liked most was Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian. I think out of all the actors who were playing these legacy characters, he did the best one. Like literally, he sounded like him, he acted like him. His character made all the decisions that Lando would make. I think the only downside, just in my opinion, is like his whole relationship with L3, which just a little weird. But that's just my thoughts on that. I'll just leave that for another discussion. I thought like Alden Ehrenreich, did the best he could as Han Solo. I think it was definitely going to be like an impossible task to portray Harrison Ford's version of Han Solo and kind of make it his own. He was always going to be compared to Harrison Ford. So when I saw the movie, I tried to keep my expectations low in a way, and I guess I wasn't disappointed, since I kind of kept my expectations low, just because Han Solo is my favorite character in the original Star Wars trilogy. So obviously I kind of had high expectations when I realized that there was going to be a Solo Star Wars movie. But after seeing more of the trailers and like reviews and stuff, I'm just like, just kind of keep my expectations low. And I guess I wasn't disappointed. It's like just like a fun self-contained story. Tells the origin of Han and Chewie and the Millennium Falcon and Lando in a really decent way. I think the only downside is that I guess Ron Howard kind of played it safe with this movie. It would have been really interesting if Phil Lord and Chris Miller actually directed Solo, a Star Wars story. And apparently they were like 3/4 of the way done with production. They got fired, which is kind of crazy to think about. And then, Ron Howard kind of came in and, picked up the pieces and finished the storyline and everything. We saw who was laughing after that. Phil Lord and Chris Miller went on to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and, won the Oscar for that movie. And, Ron Howard and Solo, kind of became like the lowest grossing Star Wars movie at that time, and in a way kind of canceled all of the future Star Wars stories for film and everything until we get kind of like Rogue Squadron and the Taika Waititi movie later on. But that's kind of like my only downside is the fact that Kathleen Kennedy has all these different amazing filmmakers in mind for these movies and these spinoffs and everything. She hired Gareth Edwards, who directed like Monster and Godzilla, to direct Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, and just based on those early trailers, it looked like it was going to be like really dark and gritty, and then suddenly she kind of takes him, silently removes him off the project, and brings in Tony Gilroy to kind of pick up the pieces on that and kind of make it more Star Wars friendly movie. And it's just like, why'd you hire him if he's not really gonna express himself the way he wants to? And then same thing with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, where you hire these amazing directors, Lego Movie, 21 Jump Street, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, these amazing directors, and then it's like, you're kind of making Han Solo, like a Ace Ventura type character. I mean, I wasn't on set, so I don't really know how things went down. I guess Lawrence Kasdan was upset, Alden Ehrenreich was upset with the direction that they were doing. So I guess maybe it was a good thing that they were removed, but it would have been kind of interesting if we saw their take. At least it would have been exciting. It would have been interesting and bold. But you gotta have Ron Howard, George Lucas's boy, from like Willow and all that, take the reins and everything. So I guess I understand it from like a business perspective. You want to make good on your investment. You don't want to have like a flop on your hands. But it turns out they did anyway, just by playing it safe. But anyway, those are kind of like my overall thoughts on Solo, and kind of behind the scenes drama that happened just for the making of that movie. It's too bad that it didn't do quite as well as they wanted, and then that's kind of the end of their A Star Wars Story series. They only had series of two, and they kind of dropped it after that. Unless like Rogue Squadron is going to be a Star Wars story, but I think Rogue Squadron is just going to be just Rogue Squadron, not a Star Wars story, unless I'm wrong about that. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Solo, and we can kind of move on from there. All right, now we move on to The Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2. And not gonna lie, this is definitely my favorite show on Disney Plus. Not only my favorite Star Wars show, but probably just like my favorite just show in general. Just from those first trailers, you just knew that they were gonna take this seriously. This is gonna be like a dark, gritty Star Wars show. I know George Lucas originally wanted to have a Star Wars set in like the underworld, as they called it, and this one definitely did the trick for sure. It just has like the best action, the best acting, the best set design. I think the only one one that kind of rivals it in a way is like Andor, but yeah, I'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, as far as like Mandalorian, like both seasons were great. I'm excited for season 3. But yeah, overall, yeah, just a really great show. And just the production, the fact that they have like the stagecraft technology where they can like make any single background that they want. They don't have to have like a blue screen or anything. Like the actors can just kind of see what's going on behind them. The camera can kind of turn with them and the background with them. And then obviously like Grogu, my man Grogu, kind of taking the world by storm. Yeah, I think my only like negative with the show is that there are some episodes that were more self-contained. They have that episode with Mayfeld and his crew of like pirates and everything that kind of go off on this heist, and you kind of feel like that was kind of veers off the rails a little bit, just as far as like the trajectory of where the show's kind of going, of like Mando on the run from the Imperials after taking the asset, instead of delivering him to the Werner Herzog character. But yeah, it really does seem like it was kind of self-contained. It was definitely a bottle episode. But yeah, that was really like my own like criticism about the show, is that some of the episodes were like definitely more self-contained. Some of them, like even in season 2, where he's helping like the frog lady, on that ice planet with the ice spiders, you can kind of skip that episode. Season 1, in my opinion, was just like a little bit better than season 2. Just kind of had that dark, gritty tone, had like that kind of Western feel to it. Mando going from place to place on the run from the Empire, and then also, trying to make that money when he could. It really had a really good like arc to that season. Like how it starts off on, the planet of Navarro, and then it kind of trails off into different planets, and then it all kind of comes back to Navarro, and then actually fighting with Grief Karga and Cara Dune against like Moff Gideon, and then the fact that they kind of like fly off in the end for more adventures was really, really fun. Then obviously Moff Gideon with the Darksaber still on his trail. I think season 2, like why it ranks a little bit lower for me, is the fact that it's kind of trying to be kind of like the backdoor pilot for these different shows. Like it's trying to spin off Ahsoka and at the time the Rangers of the New Republic, Book of Boba Fett, and then obviously Mando season 3 going forward. So it kind of becomes less about Mando's story and kind of about these other characters coming in and then eventually spinning off, which was okay. But yeah, it would have been cool if it was just Mando's season. And then at the time, maybe in season 3, they would have kind of done that more. But yeah, overall, I think, season 2 was great. I know some people have complaints about, Luke Skywalker coming in at the end. I guess I'm kind of jumping into the changes, but I think if I were to change the ending of season 2, it's like maybe, they take control of that kind of Imperial ship. They rescue Grogu, and they kind of take control, and then maybe they kind of fly off to see Luke Skywalker, at his planet, and then drop off Grogu that way, kind of like echoing Force Awakens, where, they defeat all the bad guys, and then they kind of fly off, they find Luke Skywalker, and then that could have been a really emotional moment for Mando to kind of give up Grogu to Luke Skywalker, because he sees Luke Skywalker, on his planet, setting up the new Jedi Temple with those little kind of robot droids that we see in Book of Boba Fett later on. Mando realizes, like, yeah, this is where Grogu belongs. I have to give him up. I have to kind of sacrifice my own happiness, so to speak, and then give Grogu up to Luke Skywalker because, he's obviously Force sensitive, and, he needs a Jedi to train him in the Jedi arts and everything. That could have been a good, springboard off for, season 3 of Mando, or I guess that storyline kind of gets picked back up again in Book of Boba Fett, which I'll get to later. But yeah, honestly, that's really like my only change. And then the obvious one of the deepfake technology with Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker, where it looked very, very jarring. And then one guy on YouTube who did like, hey, Lucasfilm, I did a better CGI recreation of Luke Skywalker, and like, here you go. And then he actually got hired onto Book of Boba Fett to do like the deepfake technology of Luke Skywalker, which I thought, yeah, it was pretty awesome. But yeah, that's like my only criticism about that. It's just like, yeah, the kind of off-putting CGI recreation of Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi era. Overall, yeah, I love Mandalorian. I'm excited for season 3 and excited to see Mando and Grogu's relationship develop, and how they're going to get more involved in the Mandalore culture, and see how the Empire factors into all that, and his relationship with Bo-Katan, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, great show. All right, and now we get into the Rise of Skywalker, and yeah, this is definitely the epic conclusion of the new trilogy. Kind of like what I was saying before. First, they had Colin Trevorrow do episode 9. And, I haven't read the entire script for Duel of the Fates, his original script for episode 9. I read maybe about like the first 45, 50 pages. But from what I read, it was like, it would have been really, really cool if they actually went with that. The ones we have now, yeah, not so much. But yeah, kind of like what I was saying before, it just would have been great if, one, they just had the overall plan for the sequel trilogy, kind of just stuck out with that. Or two, if J.J. Abrams just kind of went in the direction that Rian Johnson left him with The Last Jedi, instead of kind of like trying to steer back the ship to kind of like his storylines that he was setting up in Force Awakens. You can just tell that, there's just no consistency with the new trilogy. I know, like I said before, there's like plenty of videos explaining, how this is kind of like the anti-trilogy and everything, how everything's like not consistent. So I won't get too deep into all that. Yeah, it was just like a letdown, in many respects. There's not really, too much to say about this one. It was just really, it was really just like a letdown for, the entire Skywalker saga, for the new sequel trilogy. Yeah, just don't really have too much to say. All right, so now we move on to The Clone Wars Season 7. So I thought this was like one of the best seasons of The Clone Wars. Like my overall thoughts on Clone Wars was, just like a great series. I know we had the movie, which was, not not the best. But yeah, as far as the series, obviously the first couple seasons were, a little like hit or miss. Just kind of like with any of the Star Wars animated shows, you kind of have to like find your footing, kind of set the tone, and kind of like grow as the show goes on. By the time they're introducing, like Cad Bane and like the whole like bounty hunter storyline, and then when Darth Maul came in, like that was like really where the show kind of took off. I think from like season 5 onwards is like really where I got like really into the show. As soon as they introduced Darth Maul, his whole storyline, I thought that was like really, really compelling. So I'm glad that they kind of like not necessarily like wrapped up his story, but ended his kind of Clone Wars era storyline in this show. And then obviously like with Ahsoka, that whole cliffhanger that we had at, I think, in season 6, where she's brought back on the Jedi Council, but then she kind of turns her back and, kind of goes her own way. I thought it was really, really interesting. But yeah, I guess like my only like criticism was just like some of the episodes were like I felt like a little bit unnecessary. I think like the whole like kind of like Martez sister storyline, could have been cut out. I guess the only like really reason why they had it in there was because they had to really show what Ahsoka was up to while she was, excommunicated from the Jedi Council, and, kind of see like what it's like, outside of, the temple, see like how normal people are affected by, the reign of like, the separatists and the Republic during the Clone Wars and everything, to kind of give like a ground level view of like what's going on. But yeah, those were kind of the episodes that I wasn't really compelled by. Like obviously like the last couple episodes where we see kind of like the ending of Darth Maul's kind of reign with his all of his faction, the kind of like the resolution, the Mandalorians and everything. I thought was like really, really awesome. And then kind of like the tie-ins to Revenge of the Sith. Like I thought it was really, really interesting, the fact that the Clone Wars, obviously the Clone Wars ends at the end of Revenge of the Sith. So it's kind of cool seeing it in animated form where like we're not necessarily following the primary characters like Anakin and Obi-Wan, but we're kind of following Ahsoka during this whole time, and like Rex and all the other clones as well. Seeing them, be affected by Order 66 and, taking out all the Jedi. And how Ahsoka is kind of dealing with all that. Technically she's not a Jedi anymore, but she's still like a Force user. She still uses a lightsaber. And just seeing her and Rex kind of work together to kind of figure out like what's going on. Everything that happened on the ship and as it was going down. I thought that was just like a really interesting touch that they would do that, because at first I didn't think that they were going to have like a parallel storyline going on with season 7 happening during the events of Revenge of the Sith. I thought it was kind of be its own kind of storyline, kind of leading into Revenge of the Sith, where like maybe it ends with the capture of Chancellor Palpatine, General Grievous swooping in and taking Chancellor Palpatine, kind of like they did in like the micro series version. I thought it was going to kind of be like a CGI recreation of that, and then kind of lead into the events of Revenge of the Sith. But I think it was kind of cool that it was happening during the events of Revenge of the Sith, and the fact that they had like dialogue that was happening during that movie, and you kind of see like continuations of scenes like before they cut off in the movie, and kind of see where they went. And, it totally makes sense that, Ahsoka was there during that time, kind of seeing, like, her backstory. They didn't, like, retcon anything where it's like, wait, Ahsoka couldn't have been there? Like, I didn't see her in the movie. Like, where it was, like, what? But yeah, Dave Filoni, he's definitely a master storyteller. He knows Star Wars. He knows like what works, what doesn't. He's just like a mastermind at everything. I talk to my friends about this all the time, but like maybe he should like run Lucasfilm. I know he's in charge of like Lucasfilm Animation, and he's like doing a great job with all of his shows there. But I mean, it would be really cool if like Dave Filoni and like Jon Favreau were like the new chief creative officer and the new like chief executive officer of Lucasfilm. As of this recording, there's news of like Bob Iger has replaced Bob Chapek as the CEO of Disney once again. So there are kind of rumors like, oh shoot, is Kathleen Kennedy going to be fired or anything? I know Bob Iger's motto is that he wants everything to kind of be more creatively driven instead of money driven, kind of like what Bob Chapek was doing a little bit. But yeah, that would be really interesting if Dave Filoni took over Lucasfilm as chief creative officer, and then Jon Favreau kind of came in as a new chief executive officer. So we'll see what happens with that. As for now, I'm just glad that he is where he is at Lucasfilm, telling amazing stories, like Tales of Jedi, which we'll get into a little bit later. But for now, yeah, back to Clone Wars. Yeah, I think my only criticism really, was just kind of that whole Martez storyline. And I think if I were to change anything, I think if they were to have a full-on 22 episode season of Clone Wars, it would have been really cool to see more of it and have more storylines, just more stuff kind of leading into Revenge of the Sith or events during Revenge of the Sith. But I know they're really just trying to have kind of a mini season. I think there's 12 episodes in this season, so they really kind of wanted to just streamline the story a little bit more and kind of just wrap up the series, because I know they didn't really get that opportunity with season 6 because obviously Disney bought Lucasfilm, and then they had to cancel it because it was on Cartoon Network, which is owned by Warner Brothers. And then I know they had a couple episodes that were on Netflix, kind of the lost episodes to kind of wrap up that story. But yeah, I'm so glad that Dave Filoni got the opportunity to wrap up his story and kind of a compelling ending, not only to the Clone Wars within the universe, but just the Clone Wars series in general, with just an amazing epic conclusion, and then kind of plant the seeds for what Ahsoka Tano might be doing later on in her shows, and all the cameos that she makes in Rebels and Mandalorian and all that. Kind of going back to Rebels, I'm glad that he got he got to kind of end the show on his terms with that show as well. Hopefully we can kind of get more Dave Filoni stuff in the future. We'll get to more of his stuff later on. But yeah, I'm just glad he is where he is, and he did an amazing job wrapping up the Clone Wars series. So yeah, not really too much to change with that one. Okay, now we move on to The Bad Batch, and yeah, this one was a pretty good show as well. I think my only downside is that I kind of wish it was just kind of more of a self-contained series that didn't necessarily kind of continue on to a season 2. Maybe we'll see what happens with season 2. I think they had a really good arc with this series, because at first I thought it was going to kind of be kind of what I was saying before, kind of make the Saving Private Ryan comparison, where it's kind of about the Bad Batch, and they're kind of on this kind of last mission, which would have kind of been cool if Omega was kind of Ryan in a way, and they had to save her from Kamino and from all these different Imperials who are trying to go after her, because she's another clone, another unaltered clone, kind of like Boba Fett was, and kind of be on the run. And then maybe each one of them kind of sacrifices themselves as the series goes on, until they kind of get her to kind of the safe haven area where she can kind of live on and thrive. But yeah, obviously Dave Filoni has an overall story that he wants to tell. And, just based on the trailer for Bad Batch Season 2, you can tell there's going to be a lot more, obstacles that they have to overcome, with Crosshair, kind of on their tail, and then obviously with the Imperials and the Kaminoans, with their whole scheming at the end of Season 1. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that would really be my only kind of criticism for that series. I think it was really cool at the beginning how it takes place during Order 66, and it shows little young Kanan on the run with his master, and then seeing his master killed off, and then him running off from the Bad Batch, and then feeling kind of conflicted, what's going on, what's happening. And I think it was really interesting the fact they're not really affected by the whole Order 66, the chip in their brain to make them turn against the Jedi, where they're kind of more aware of everything. I think if this was kind of more of a limited series, not necessarily there's not a season 2 or 3 or wherever they decide to go, but if they kind of just made this more maybe 10 episodes instead of 16 episodes they have here, if they kind of just had a serialized show where every episode there's a different obstacle they have to overcome, and there can just be more of a through line, and then as the show goes on, maybe they can sacrifice themselves, or one of them can sacrifice themselves or something, and can have a resolution at the end of the series or at the end of the season. But yeah, that's really my only criticism, just because there's just a couple episodes early on where they're kind of going from place to place, and obviously they're on the run and everything, and they kind of have their little side quests that don't really connect with the overall story. They're just kind of fun adventures here and there, which I thought could have been cut out. Kind of what I was saying before, kind of have that family friendly element to it, just because it's a it's an animated show. It's more like, more focused for kids. So you have to have like the Omega character in there to kind of have that audience connection. I guess just like it's interesting because it's like, it's like the Bad Batch. It's like this kind of like Clone Wars spinoff. So you're thinking it's going to be kind of like this like gritty like war show and everything. But then you have like, this like little cute little Omega character in there, and you kind of like that juxtaposition. I feel like that's kind of like the theme now that they have with Disney Star Wars is you gotta have like the dark and the light, the balance, where you kind of have like the older, wise, mature, gritty characters, and you have like the younger, kind of immature, kind of like impulsive characters, and you have to combine them. They've kind of been doing that with Rebels, with like Kanan and Ezra. They've been doing it with Bad Batch, with the Bad Batch and Omega. They've kind of been doing that with like Obi-Wan, with Obi-Wan and little Leia. Again, which is totally fine. You gotta have that kind of family-friendly audience, because like Fast and Furious say, it's all about family. Or like Guardians of the Galaxy, this is my family. It would be nice to kind of like that more kind of like just a grittier feel, in Star Wars, with the animation, kind of like what they did with Clone Wars. I'm glad they're doing that kind of more like with Andor and everything, which I'll get to later. But for the animated shows, if they have kind of more for like a teen audience, and then like a middle grade audience, and then for like the younger audiences, which I feel like they are doing that, but it'd just be nice to have more, I guess, consistency. It was like it's animated, just have it more for like the younger audience, but if it's live action before like the older audience or something. But yeah, that's like my only like critique of the show. I kind of expect it to be more like a darker, intense show, and then as soon as Omega came in, you kind of, I guess, gotta have that heart in the show. Overall, yeah, it's a good show, and I look forward to see what Dave Filoni has in store for season 2. And just based on the trailers, I think it could be really compelling. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right, now we move on to Star Wars Visions, and I thought that this was like a really good series. Again, kind of like what I said with Resistance, I haven't seen every single episode of Visions. I've only seen a handful, just because I know some of them have been really good, and some of them like haven't been as good, so I kind of just watched the ones that audiences are like really responding to a lot. The ones that have like the highest ratings and like IMDb or so. Like my opinions for Resistance, like this won't be like 100% valid until I see all the Star Wars Vision episodes. But yeah, as far as like the ones that I have seen, I thought those ones were actually really, really good. I appreciate the fact that they're taking different animation styles, like Japanese animation and like all these other animations from like around the world, just because, Star Wars in part is based on, Akira Kurosawa, like Seven Samurai and Yojimbo and, Hidden Fortress and all this stuff. So it totally makes sense to have, a Jedi character or, a Force-sensitive character, look like a samurai, with their swords and, have that anime feel. So I thought that was really, really cool seeing all that. And yeah, I hope we get more. I think they actually confirmed that they're going to have a season 2. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing, more of like different animation styles from around the world, different like storytelling they have. Just have like a different feel to Star Wars, different side of it. I'm really, really looking forward to it. But yeah, I guess my only criticism, like, again, I haven't seen all of Star Wars Visions, but like some of them I saw were just kind of like, they were like okay, but that's mainly because, it's like a different storytelling technique. I'm a big anime fan, and, like when I'm watching like Naruto or something, that's clearly different from, another show that would like I don't know, like Gravity Falls or something, where clearly there's like a different storytelling aspect to anime. Like with anime, like there's a little bit more internal dialogue, a little bit more kind of like explanation of like what's going on. The characters are always kind of like, like before my power move, I'm going to do this and then that and then that. Whereas like with American television, they kind of just, it's more like show don't tell, and with anime it's kind of like show and tell. Anime kind of just takes its time a little bit more than American animation, where American animation is kind of like go, where anime takes its time. The storytelling's not as traditional, can kind of be more experimental with that. Things can kind of like the tone kind of switch back and forth. So yeah, I totally understand. But yeah, honestly, that's like really like my only like criticism from like what I would see from Visions. And honestly, there's not really much I would change. These are just like self-contained stories. They don't tie into the overall Star Wars saga. They're just kind of like experimental films in a way. That kind of just take the Star Wars aesthetic and then apply it to their, this different form of animation. Once I see all the episodes, I'm sure I'll have like a greater appreciation for all the talents that these animators have. And then, I'm looking forward to a season 2. I'm looking forward to seeing more animation styles and different stories within the Star Wars galaxy that are kind of influenced by, Japanese animation and, anime and samurai films and everything. So, should be good. All right, now we move on to the Book of Boba Fett. This show was okay. What would have been really cool is if, this was actually just a movie. Originally, they were wanting to do a Boba Fett movie, like way back in the day, way back when they were announcing, the fact that they were going to be doing Star Wars stories, like Solo, a Star Wars story announced, and like Rogue One, and then back when Obi-Wan was just going to be like a movie, or I guess like a trilogy at that point. And then they had Boba Fett with Josh Trank directing, but then, he got fired after all the controversy he had, like after, I guess wrecking a hotel or stuff like that. And then obviously the failure of Fan Four Stick, as I call it. And then, I guess the project was shelved until now, where they're actually going to have like a series instead of just a movie. And, I thought Boba Fett's appearance in Mandalorian Season 2 was like actually just one of the best episodes of Season 2. It was really cool just seeing like how amazing he was. And, just in my opinion, in the original trilogy, and, you can hate me all you want, but I thought Boba Fett was a little bit overrated. I honestly thought Jango Fett was a more compelling character. So don't hate me too much. But as soon as I saw him in the episode of Mandalorian, I was just like, oh, dang, yep. Boba Fett is awesome. He pretty much took down an entire garrison of stormtroopers all by himself. So I was really looking forward to seeing him in the Book of Boba Fett, because Mandalorian Season 2 kind of had that post-credit scene of Boba killing Bib Fortuna and then taking the throne, the Hutt throne. So I thought it was really going to be kind of like, like a Godfather type movie or series in the Star Wars universe. So I was really looking forward to it. But the fact that they made him more of like I guess like an honorable mafia head in a way, I don't know, it was like a little bit of a letdown in my opinion. It would have been cool to kind of see that grittier, I know I keep using that word gritty, but it would have been nice. But I feel like in here, it really applies just because of the tone that they set in Mandalorian Season 2 of how Boba Fett is. Would have been really cool. And I guess there were like rumors about, there was like a lot of like script tampering. I guess like John and Dave had ideas for what they wanted to do with Boba Fett at the end of Mando Season 2. And then, I guess Kathleen and the story team, kind of put their fingerprints all over it. And they kind of, we got to make Boba family friendly. We can't have him be evil or anything, or, be like an anti-hero or whatnot. So they have to make him like an honorable, leader of this town of the Hutt clan and whatnot. So I thought that was kind of like a missed opportunity. It really could have been, really like I said before, like a Godfather or like Goodfellas in the Star Wars universe and everything. So I was like really looking forward to that. As far as like positives and stuff, like I really appreciated like the flashbacks they had. Like I was like in awe when I saw Boba Fett like in the Sarlacc pit, him fighting his way out and everything. Like I thought that was really cool. And then seeing that hand pop up, that image that we've been always wanting to see, at least the fans since Return of the Jedi in '83 have always wanted to see, like how did Boba Fett get out of the Sarlacc pit? And then we finally got to see it. I thought they nailed all that. I mean, the Sarlacc pit, and then meeting up with the Tuskens, and kind of being involved in their culture a little bit more. It was really cool seeing more of like the Tusken culture, because as far as we've just seen kind of like hints. They're kind of like these savages and everything. Like, they're vicious, mindless creatures, as was said in Attack the Clones. But it was cool seeing like how they kind of have this like spiritual, honorable side, and we kind of see like how Boba got that staff that he had, that kind of Tusken staff in Mando, how he kind of met up with like Fennec Shan. I thought, all the flashback stuff was cool. It's just all the stuff in the present. He was like, I gotta get back to my Bacta tank. I've been injured, I gotta, it's time for a bath. I thought, that was a little kind of weird. But, I feel like they could have kind of delve more deeply into the gangster aspect of it. I thought the one scene that was really cool is like where they're actually taking out the members of all these different factions all at once, and then they realize like, oh shoot, they're coming after me next. I thought that was really like kind of reminded me of The Godfather, where they're taking out the heads of the 5 families. Other than that, I think if it was just like a movie that focused on Boba Fett, being like that kind of like dark, intense character that was set in Mandalorian Season 2, would have been really cool. kind of like what they originally set out to do. If they were to make it a series, just have it be about Boba Fett and not really, jump to different storylines, different characters. Like the fact that by I'm not complaining about this, but by like I think it's episode like 5 and 6 where they kind of they kind of completely go away from Boba Fett's character, and we pick up with the Mandalorian getting that N1 fighter and flying off, and then meeting up with Luke Skywalker and with Ahsoka. Obviously that was like that could have been in Mando season 2 if they wanted to, or beginning of Mando season 3. But the fact that Boba Fett's show got hijacked by Mando, and it was like it's gonna be the Mandalorian spin-off show, and then okay, oh shoot, we gotta get back to Boba Fett. I thought that was kind of an interesting choice. Yeah, so I think if I were to change the show, make it maybe like either just make it a movie, or maybe like I don't know, like a 6-episode show that was just about Boba Fett, dealing with the Star Wars underworld, just being a full-on gangster. And yeah, just cut the Power Rangers out. I know they had their own name, but I'm going to call them the Power Rangers. Just cut them out completely. So yeah, those were my overall thoughts on Boba Fett. Yeah, I guess we're not getting a season 2, so maybe he'll appear again in Mando season 3, and maybe John and Dave will kind of adopt the tone that they had from Mando season 2 and kind of make him awesome again. So we'll see. All right, now we move on to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this is like another show that I was kind of like, I guess 50-50 on, kind of like with Book of Boba Fett, where there's like some great, amazing stuff in it, but then there's also some of the stuff that's like, why did that have to be done? I think the highlight of the show was definitely Hugh McGregor. Like, he was definitely the best part of the prequels as Obi-Wan. I thought he was great. He gave like a really compelling performance. I think it was just like, kind of like I was saying before with Book of Boba Fett, if this was just a movie, because I know they originally had it as a movie, and then it's like, oh no, this is going to be a trilogy, which I guess technically they did with the show, because there's like 6 episodes, and they're all like roughly an hour each, except for the 4th episode, which is just like half hour of in and out and done, but I'll get to that later. So really, like, the show really is like a trilogy in a way, and it really could have been really, really compelling. But I guess my biggest problem with the show was the character of Reva. The fact that, kind of like how like Mando hijacked Book of Boba Fett, like I feel like she kind of hijacked this whole series in a way. She could have just been this really cool Inquisitor character. I mean, I didn't mind the fact that they gave her like a backstory of being one of the younglings during the whole Jedi Temple purge. She was one who got away, and then eventually she kind of infiltrated the Inquisitors. Became an Inquisitor, and kind of rose up in the ranks in order to get close to Darth Vader and then kill him off. I think that's like a compelling story from there. But I think if they just started off with that, have that be like the opening scene of episode 1 or something, and then kind of go into like her story, I think would have been cool. I think the fact that, they kind of start off her character as this intense Inquisitor, and then, the fact that she's like, Obi-Wan, I know all about Anakin and all this stuff. It's like, wait, what? And then you don't really find that out until like later on, be like halfway through the series and everything. I think was kind of a mistake in a way. So if you're going to make the show about Reva, just have her storyline be introduced at the beginning of the season, and then kind of roll it out as the show goes on. Either that, or just have her own series in general, which maybe they'll do, since at the end of the series she just kind of just like runs off into like the twin sunset and everything, trying to find her own way, even though it kind of contradicts a lot of the events in A New Hope. Or I guess now Luke knows that that there's Inquisitors like after him or something. But anyway, yeah, I thought Reva was a fine character. It was just, I just wish her backstory was just introduced a little bit earlier on in the show, just so we kind of empathize with her, kind of understand like where she's coming from, and then would be on her side as she's kind of trying to rise up through the ranks of the Inquisitors and take out Darth Vader, which obviously won't happen. but just to see like her like try to attempt to do it would be really cool. So that's like that's really one of the things I would change about Obi-Wan, is that just having just more Reva backstory at the front of the show rather than like kind of dish it out over time. But because obviously it's called Obi-Wan Kenobi, so we kind of came for Obi-Wan. We want to see that rematch between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, which we got, which I thought like the initial fight that they had was pretty good. I think that was like the end of episode 3 or something. But it was just weird that the fact that like Darth Vader used the Force on Obi-Wan and then kind of threw him into the fire, and he just instead of kind of like rolling him around and everything, you know, you just like okay, well now I'm just gonna head out. It's like, well, like, why don't you just like kill him from there, you know? It's like you're gonna like let him burn. It's like why don't you like let him like suffer a little bit more, you know, instead of just like okay, I'm just gonna put it down, and then head off after that. So I thought that was kind of a little bit of a contradiction. And then like the rematch at the end of episode 6 obviously couldn't have been as epic as Revenge of the Sith, since it's 10 years later. You know, neither one of them have fought in a lightsaber duel, or at least film and television wise, we haven't. Yeah, I know there's like a bunch of stuff in the comic books with Darth Vader, which I haven't read, but I assume he hasn't had as an intense of a lightsaber duel as he had with Obi-Wan. So I thought that was like, it was a little underwhelming, just in my opinion, the rematch. But I know it wasn't supposed to be about the action. It was really supposed to be about the drama going on. And I think the fact that when Obi-Wan sliced open Darth Vader's helmet, we see Anakin's eye, and we see that he's still a human being in there, but he's he's gone. Mentally he's just gone. Anakin's not there, and now it's just Darth Vader. I think they nailed that. So when they do have that rematch in A New Hope, it's like, yeah, we understand. Yeah, Anakin's dead, and now it's just Vader at the forefront. So yeah, now it's not really as emotional. It's like, now I need to take out this enemy. I'm going to train your son to take you out eventually. And we obviously see what happens with that. But at least with this show, you can kind of understand why these characters feel the way they do about each other. And I thought the flashback to the kind of Attack the Clones era of Anakin and Obi-Wan was really, really cool. Seeing all that would have been really cool if we had a full episode just about young Anakin and Obi-Wan build up their friendship, build up their somewhat rivalry they have with each other. I thought would have been really cool. And then another thing I thought was kind of a missed opportunity is that we didn't really get much of Vader in this show. I would have been fine if they kind of reduced Reva's role down a little bit more, and they kind of gave more for Hayden Christensen, Darth Vader to do. But yeah, so obviously that was like a missed opportunity with that. It's a show about Obi-Wan, but it's really about Reva. You can just call this Obi-Wan Kenobi, a Reva story, or something like that, because it just really wasn't about Obi-Wan. It was really just Reva's show. In a way. But yeah, I guess, more positive things. Like, I love the young Leia, the actress who played young Leia. I thought she nailed the tone for Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia in A New Hope. She was great. It was cool seeing Alderaan. It was cool seeing Bail Organa, his wife, kind of see more of that culture. There was just a lot of moments in the show where I'm just like, I can't believe I'm actually seeing this. And then there's also moments where I'm like, I can't believe I'm actually seeing this. So yeah, kind of like with Book of Boba Fett, it's kind of like a mixed bag. Like, when it was working, but then when it wasn't, it was just like, yeah, this is not going well. So yeah, overall, I think if this was just a 2.5 hour movie just about Obi-Wan and the main antagonist being Darth Vader, this could have been a really, really cool movie. So yeah, that's really the only real thing I would change about it, instead of kind of stretching it out into a series and having subplots that aren't really as compelling, in my opinion. Oh yeah, and the little end tag with Qui-Gon, I thought it was fine. I think it would have been cool if that was at the end of episode 5, and that's kind of like what inspires Obi-Wan to get back into the fight and take on Darth Vader and save Luke and everything. But they didn't. They kind of Obi-Wan already had his arc, and then Qui-Gon appears, and then it's like, oh hey, I'm here to give you some encouragement at the last second. It's like, oh Master, I'm already my full self, but yeah, if you want to, I can tell you about joining the Force, become a Force ghost just like me. And they're like, oh okay, good. Even though Yoda already brought that up at the end of Revenge of the Sith, how that can already be done, but I guess I can do it now at the end of this series. I mean, that'll probably help me on 10 years later when I get struck down and Darth Vader becomes the master now. But yeah, anyway, yeah, those are my overall thoughts on Obi-Wan. It was another kind of hit or miss show for me. When it was working. When it wasn't, not really. And yeah, that could have just been a movie. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on. All right, and now we come to Andor, and as of this recording, I actually just finished watching the finale of Andor, and that was kind of like the inspiration to kind of make this whole video. I kind of wanted to wait till all the Star Wars movies and shows were out for this year before giving this kind of review. I guess I'll give my overall thoughts of the show. Overall, I think it's like a really good show. I enjoy it. I think just my only downside is that there's just a lot of episodes that nothing really happens. It's really slow. So I think if this was either kind of like what I'm saying about other shows, if this was just 2.5 hour movie, or just a 6 episode series, I think it would have been really compelling, just because there's especially like I'm just gonna go on to full spoilers, so if you haven't seen the show, you can like skip this section and go to the Tales of the Jedi after this. Yeah, there's just like some episodes where like, they're playing the heist and everything, where there's like episode like 4 or 5, and nothing really happens. It's like, you have like kind of this compelling ending at the end of episode 3, and then by the time you get to episode 4 and 5, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, now we're kind of walking through the forest, or making this kind of like wooden diagrams of what we're going to be doing. I don't mind that in episode 4, have that transit, but then episode 5 is like, okay, we're just going to walk to the actual Imperial Bank. We're just going to like walk up to it and then look at it, and then in the next episode we'll have the heist. So yeah, that was just like, this really could have just been, like 6 episodes. You can have like those first 3 episodes just be 1 episode, and then kind of go on from there. Have episode 2 and 3 be the heist, and then episode 4 and 5 can be, the jailbreak. Episode 6 can be the finale that we have that just aired. I guess like my biggest criticism is that, sometimes it just doesn't really feel like a Star Wars show. It just feels like, just like a really cool just sci-fi show. I talked to my friends about this a lot, and like they're just like they get super excited. It's like, oh, it's Stormtrooper, oh, a TIE fighter, and then it's like, okay, now we're just walking through the forest talking, or now it's like, oh shoot, the Imperial Senate, and then okay, now we're kind of in this kind of flying taxi cab, or at this like, this formal dinner just talking, like, oh, okay. Which, obviously I don't mind there being like politics in Star Wars and everything, just to kind of see how the rebellion formed, how the Empire is all, reigning over the galaxy, and kind of see how these different characters kind of go from their kind of disparate situations and kind of join into the fight, either join into the fight to, take down the Empire, or to kind of like, build the Empire up and everything. So I thought that was really cool. It was just, there's just a lot of just moments where it's like, okay, nothing's really happening. I don't mind dialogue scenes, but can we get some more action here? Yeah, those are my overall criticisms for the show. But yeah, to kind of like jump into the finale, I thought the finale was like incredible. This is a show that I've been wanting to see. Kind of, we're finally starting to see, these kind of like, people who are under, this imperial reign, rise up. It really, kind of gave me kind of like Hunger Games vibes, or like, like Les Mis vibes of, like these kind of like, the people who are kind of under the oppression of the Empire, finally rising up, fighting back, starting a rebellion. The Marva, Andor's mother's character, it's like, we're gonna have a reckoning on our hands, and it's like, yeah, we're finally starting to see it. Andor finally joined the fight. He really like lost everything. He lost his mother. His friends were in danger, but he finally got them out of danger. And it's like, okay, I got the people that I love out of harm's way, and now I can finally join the rebellion with Luthen, and join the fight, and hopefully they'll meet up with Saw Gerrera's character, and kind of go from there. But yeah, I'm excited for this show. Like, again, like if this was just like like a 6 episode series, I kind of take back what I said about earlier. I don't think this would have worked as a movie. I think this would have just worked better as like a 6 episode. It's like every season is like 6 episodes or something, instead of like 12 episodes, because I feel like the show really dragged on a lot. Even like with like the prison stuff, where Andor gets sent to prison, it's really just showing like the prison life, where it's like okay, I'm showing the prison life, and I don't like it here, and I think we should escape. Nah, we'll just stay here for another 30 cycles and everything, and then finally they have some initiative to finally break out. And episode 10 was definitely one of the highlights for sure. One way out. Like, I was just cheering for those guys when they were like jumping off the side of the building into the water and everything. And I felt bad for Andy Serkis's character. The fact that he couldn't swim. I thought that Andor was gonna like grab his arm, and they're gonna jump off together, and he was gonna like swim away and everything. But yeah, obviously that didn't happen, and we didn't really see what happened with his character. Hopefully in season 2 we'll see more of him. But yeah, honestly, I thought he was way better in this series just as himself than he was as a CGI, Snoke character in the new trilogy, the sequel trilogy. But yeah, it was cool kind of finally seeing, Andy Serkis, without the little CGI dots on him, and just see, because he's an incredible actor. So just seeing him, just as himself in this universe was really cool. But yeah, those are really like my overall thoughts of the show. I'm excited for season 2. I'm glad that we finally got, like a rousing ending to this series, because there were moments when I was watching where I was like, I think I kind of just want to stop watching. There's not really much happening. It was kind of like how I felt with some of the other Star Wars shows, minus Mandalorian, kind of like Obi-Wan and Boba Fett, where like, where it's working, it works, and then when it doesn't, it's just like, nothing's happening. But yeah, overall, I think, like, it has like the best acting, best writing, best like production design, one of the best visual effects. It's up there with Mandalorian in a way. And, if you take out the Star Wars aesthetic, it could just really just be like a compelling, just sci-fi show about like politics and like the rise of a rebellion. So I think in that aspect, Tony Gilroy, the showrunner, is doing good. I know there's reports that he's not a Star Wars fan, which you can kind of tell. He's really just telling like a science fiction version of Game of Thrones with just some Star Wars little crumbs in there for us fans. But yeah, so I'm excited for season 2. I'm hoping that we kind of get more Star Wars lore in there. Can kind of show more of those missed opportunities, like show more of the Imperial Senate, kind of like the dissolving of the Imperial Senate. Oh yeah, and that tease of the Death Star at the end of this episode, again, spoiler alert, where you see like they're in the prison kind of making the little bits and pieces for the Death Star, which I had theories about, and I watched the YouTube channel Star Wars Theory. He had theories about. Now it's finally confirmed. So that's really cool that it wasn't just that they didn't go this prison planet for nothing, to the fact that they were actually using the pieces for the Death Star, and the fact that once your prison sentence ends, they just send you to another level and you continue on your prison sentence, and the people don't like know about it, or else they'll get fried, which I thought was really, really cool plot twist, and the fact that the aesthetic of the prison, where you step on it and they can just like press a button and you can get electrocuted or fried or whatever it is, which was really cool. It's like, oh shoot, how is Andor gonna get out of this? But like obviously he did in one episode, which I was surprised by. Or like the episodes leading up to it, it's just like, okay, like we hate being in this prison and it's terrible and we're learning all these twists, and then suddenly in all these episodes, in the episode 10, like we planned the heist and we're gonna break out. So I was like, oh, we could have done that 3-4 episodes ago, but oh well. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I'm excited for season 2. I'm glad that Andor's finally in the fight, and that we can kind of get more connections to Rogue One. Maybe get more Mon Mothma, more Saw Gerrera, more founding of the rebellion, and yeah, just kind of plant the seeds for what's going to happen in Rogue One. Yeah, I'm excited to see Andor, his character arc, because he was really surprising in this story. I was surprised to see like how kind of roguish he was, where he just killed those 2 officers in cold blood, and he was always on the run. He was always like backstabbing people or like betraying people in a way. He's kind of in it for himself, and then he realizes that it's like, yeah, I can't be on the run. There's this empire is taking over my homeland. My mother was passed away due to all this, and her whole dream was to like kind of have that spark of the rebellion, fight against the Imperials. And now he's like, no, I'm all in. I'm gonna fight this empire. I'm gonna bring it down. And yeah, now I'm excited to see him finally getting together with K2SO and having that whole relationship, being on Yavin and being in the heart of the rebellion, and then taking those steps to finally take down the Empire once and for all in the events in Rogue One. So yeah, overall, this is like a really good show. I'm excited for the next season. There were a couple episodes I could have done without, and it would have been nice if it was just like a shorter season, just more serialized, self-contained, faster paced. So I hope for season 2 that they kind of take the criticism to heart for the hardcore Star Wars fans, and just have kind of like pick up the pace a little bit. Have more Star Wars tie-ins, more Easter eggs here and there, instead of having it in Luthen's shop. But that's for another time. Just kind of continue on, the rise of the rebellion and the fall of the Empire. So yeah, I'm excited for season 2, and definitely recommend this show. All right, and then we'll just wrap up this video with Tales of the Jedi, and this is like another great show that I really liked. Obviously, the fact that Dave Filoni is all over it. Anything he really touches is gold. So I knew that this was going to be good. Just based on the trailers, just seeing the young Dooku, and then more backstory for Ahsoka, I thought was really cool. Honestly, the only downside is that I wish there was more. Not only do I wish there was more, but I wish there were like longer episodes. That would have been really cool if like these were actually like 22-minute episodes. But I know these were like short films and everything, or like short series, short stories. For what we got, like we got some really, really cool, compelling stories, and I was particularly interested in like the Dooku episodes, just seeing him get more backstory, just seeing like why he turned away from the Jedi Council, and seeing kind of like the flaws within the Jedi. Obviously we kind of see that in the prequels, but we kind of see like like they're kind of blind to a lot of this other stuff that's kind of going on in the galaxy. and maybe there are alternatives to bring down the dark side and everything, or like end the war, and like the separatists versus like the New Republic. Maybe they don't have it all figured out and everything. So even though you might not agree with everything Dooku was standing for, you can kind of understand it a little bit more. I'm glad they had like characters like Qui-Gon in there, because he was kind of like in the gray area, as far as like the Jedi Council. They had Yaddle in there, and again, spoiler alert, that whole duel that Yaddle and Dooku had, and then eventually he slayed Yaddle down. Like that was very like dark and very dramatic. I'm like, yeah, see, you can do kind of dark dramatic stuff in animation and everything. It doesn't have to be like super kid friendly and all that, and you can tell a compelling story, not have too much violence and too much darkness and stuff like that. And then seeing more of like Ahsoka, her storyline, just seeing her whole origin story about how as soon as she was born, she was already force sensitive, and she can already have communication with like animals, and kind of like manipulate their minds and everything. Thought that was really cool. I think the only like downside for that is like I thought we would actually see the Jedi Council visiting her planet, and then her family having to actually give her up, because we haven't really seen that in any Star Wars shows or movies or anything. I guess the only thing we've seen was when Anakin gets taken away by Qui-Gon in Episode 1. But obviously he's like a 9-year-old kid. It wasn't like him as a baby being taken away. So it would be kind of cool if we saw that. But yeah, totally understandable with that one. But yeah, I love like the episode where she's training with the clones, and then we kind of see like, I was like, okay, why is she doing all this training stuff? And then we see kind of flash forward to the Clone Wars episode, the season 7 episode, where we see like how she puts that all in use. Like, oh shoot. So I thought that was like really, really cool, really emotional scene. And then seeing like the funeral for Padme, I'm seeing it from a different perspective, and the fact that Ahsoka was there that whole time, and the conversation he has with Bail Organa, and the fact that okay, we may have lost this battle, but we're not gonna lose the war. And then her becoming the origins of her becoming Fulcrum, and then how she continues on like Rebels, and then Ahsoka, and then all that. So yeah, it just kind of got me more excited for the Ahsoka show. See more of Ahsoka's backstory and her history. How she's like compelled to do the things she does in the rest of the Star Wars series and films and everything. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for that. And then yeah, with Dooku, just seeing more like backstory with him, because like we didn't really get too much of him in Attack the Clones. Like he showed up like halfway, and then obviously we got some stuff in Clone Wars, but we didn't really get too much like backstory stuff. We kind of just got stuff of him scheming throughout the Clone Wars and everything, and then obviously Revenge of the Sith, he gets killed off, and you don't really get too much with him. So it was cool to kind of like watch the series, and then maybe like later on rewatch Episode 2 and Clone Wars and Episode 3 to kind of see like why he did the things he did, why he turned to the dark side, how he kind of sees the cracks in the Republic and in the Jedi Order. Yeah, so I'm really hoping that they do either like a season 2 of this, like more Jedi. Maybe they'll do like a Plo Koon, because I know that's Dave Filoni's like favorite Jedi. Maybe Ki-Adi Kit Fisto, like all Mace Windu, who knows, Anakin, Obi-Wan, like any Jedi really. Yoda would be kind of cool. Or like a Tales of the Sith, get more of like Darth Maul, get more of General Grievous, go back into like the Knights of the Old Republic or something, like Darth Bane, or whoever it might be. Kind of get these different Sith tales and everything like that. Oh yeah. And another thing, the episode where Ahsoka is kind of like in that kind of farm planet, she has to hide her powers, and then obviously the traitor teenager guy tells this Inquisitor about her, and they have their little duel. Kind of reminded me of the duel in Rebels between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, where it was kind of very short and everything. It would have been kind of cool if it was like a big full-on battle, but I know this is kind of more of like an emotional battle, kind of like they established in Rebels. So yeah, that's totally understandable, but would have been cool if we kind of saw him more, because he was a very like interesting design to him. Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like the Sith character in Knights of the Old Republic, kind of like, or like the early concepts of like Kylo Ren with his mask and everything. So it would have been kind of nice if like we at least got to see his identity after his head got chopped off and everything. But I know this is more like Ahsoka's journey, and not necessarily about the whole kind of Sith influence, but really just her journey into becoming this kind of new hope in a way for the galaxy, and like helping out the new rebellion characters. But yeah, overall, those were my thoughts on Tales of Jedi. Thought it was a really great show. I really hope they either do a season 2 or do like a spin-off series like Tales of the Sith, or like other short series that they have. But yeah, I thought overall it was really, really good, and I wish there was more. And all right, I've been talking for almost 2 hours now, so I'm just gonna wrap up this video. Yeah, like overall, like those are kind of like my thoughts on the Disney Star Wars films. Initially, when we got the news that Disney was buying Lucasfilm, that we're gonna get more Star Wars movies. Obviously we as fans thought it would be a little bit different. We thought we'd kind of get more something that was kind of geared more towards, George Lucas's vision. It would have been nice if he was actually involved in Star Wars, but, he called it a divorce in a way, where he's like, yeah, I'm going to move on and I'm moving forward and you're kind of going to do your own thing with Star Wars, which is a little bit of a shame. It'd been nice if, he was still involved. But, I hope he's doing good with his little independent movies. I know he said he was going to do movies where, he's like, I'm going to do small independent movies that no one's going to see, but I hope we get to see more. I know he did, I think, a movie called Strange Magic, which I haven't seen, but I don't know if it did super well. And then I know he has the George Lucas museum that he's planning on building. I haven't really followed up on that, but I'm really hoping that goes through. And yeah, I'm just hoping that he's living his life in retirement. And Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, I hope that they continue to lead on his legacy that he left behind with Star Wars, which I know they do. And then everything that they work on, they bring George Lucas in. He's always visiting the set and being little puppet Grogu and everything, and he's having a good smile on his face, as at least from the Disney Gallery Mandalorian videos. So yeah, I'm hoping that in the future Dave and John can have a little bit more influence in Lucasfilm and Star Wars in general, and kind of bring it back to what we as fans really want to see with Star Wars, and not really have things be agenda driven or money driven or not really creator driven. So we'll see. And we'll see with this news of Bob Iger coming back to Disney as CEO, if he'll have more of a creator driven focus with Disney and with Star Wars and Lucasfilm. With Kathleen Kennedy, she can continue on to produce films and everything, but as far as the creator control, hopefully Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau can have a little bit more influence on that. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. So yeah, those are my overall thoughts on Disney Star Wars. I'm probably going to do another video of the future of Disney Star Wars and what I hope to see and what hopefully Disney will do with Disney Star Wars. But for now, thanks so much for watching this video, and be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more videos. If there's another franchise you'd like me to take on, maybe the DC movies or something, or Disney movies, Pixar movies, whatever it might be, just let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.